Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our online panel on the state of software as a service, or in short, SaaS in Africa. My name is Petra Wolkenstein. I'm general partner of Startup Wise Guys Africa. I'm here today to have a good conversation with our guest, Charles Dairo. He's founder and CEO of Bizop. But before we start the conversation, let me introduce a little bit how we are doing this today. So, dear guests, there is a comment section open. You're free to use that one. You can put in comments, questions that you have for Charles or for me, or in general comments that you have on the state of software as a service in Africa. Please engage. We are convinced that software as a service in Africa is really an important topic, and we saw it already on the number of participants that we have for today, that this topic is really something that people want to discuss. So to open our conversation, let me give you some numbers and a little bit background information on the global level from our own experience at Startup Wise Guys. So software as a service, or SaaS, to put the framework, this is a business model that brings recurring revenue. So every month recurring revenues, not one-time fees. And it's different from transactional business models where you have commission-based one-time effects when somebody is buying something and you get a commission on top. And it refers to software, so software products that run normally online and can be bought online and used online. Within Startup Wise Guys globally, we have invested into more than 360 startups over the last 10 years. In preparation for our talk today, I had a look how many are really out of that in SaaS and in which areas are they. Mainly SaaS startups with that business model are coming from the area of fintech, so financial services and enterprise software. So mostly CRM, ERP solutions, but also marketing tech. I can put in some examples a little bit later on also from the global level. But we are a lot more curious about the African level. So when it comes to Africa-based startups, the SaaS business model is a little bit different. And for this purpose, we have Charles Dairo over here. I'm glad that you have joined us today because you're running a SaaS-based startup also. So you're the CEO and founder of Bizop. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro on Bizop and on your story, how you came to put this product on the market?
Yeah, always happy to share our story. I'm Charles, one of the co-founders of Bizop, and I'm the CEO as well. Bizop is a process management and workflow automation software. Before Bizop, I started a web development agency right after the university and ran it for 13 years. And that pretty much ties into why Bizop. Before Bizop as well, I launched like different SaaS products before settling on Bizop. Why Bizop? So, it started, like I said, an agency right after school as a solo founder. I worked really hard to deliver high quality service to our customers. And over time, I started getting more work that I could handle. And so I sort of figured it just made sense to start hiring people. And then I started hiring people and it felt good. Like, wow, look at me. I have a company, I have a team. And I thought that was the end of my problems, but it was just the beginning. I realized that even as I hired more people, my workload wasn't reducing. I spent the time I used to work on client projects. Now I was spending it explaining how things worked, correcting mistakes, trying to get people to do things the right way, the way customers expected it to be done, the way I had always done it. And it was a nightmare. Like, again, I was working with people that might stay 1 year or might stay 3 months. And so if someone left the company, I had to start that onboarding and training process over again. Along the way, things were frustrating, but I sort of thought, okay, maybe this is how business works. Maybe this is just one of those things. But one of my friends, Marianne, she's a consultant, and she had been working with businesses to solve this particular problem. So she used to work with businesses individually to structure their operations, sort of document their processes, make it easy to train their team members. And then she reached out to me and said, "Hey, Charles, I think I want to build a software to solve this particular problem." But I mean, she wasn't technical. She needed help to do that. And when I heard the problem she was trying to solve, I was like, I mean, let's do this together, right? And that's how we started Bizop. Along the way, reached out to Hope, who joined our team as technical co-founder, CTO as well. And that's really how Bizop started, and that's how the journey into Bizop also started, from my background as a service business owner running an agency.
Thanks so much for the background story. And you have mentioned also that you have done also in the past, not just this product as software as a service, but also other products before. So you know rather well about the business model. When it comes to Bizop, so this automation of the onboarding and training of people on processes, what's the advantage for Bizop to choose a SaaS business model? Why wouldn't you do transactional business model? Can you tell us a little bit the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I mean, as someone that started from a service business where it was mostly transactional, right? You pay us X amount of money and then we deliver this particular service. Over time, it just quickly became obvious that it wasn't very scalable, right? We had to, in terms of like the operational costs and operational efforts involved, grows almost in the same direction as the number of customers that we have. So if we have lots of customers, we are spending a lot more in terms of delivering those services, and there's a lot more effort. In contrast to like the SaaS business model, where we have, similar to any product out there, you pay for a product and you get the product, and that's the end of the transaction, right? But of course, as SaaS, it's more like a relationship. So one major thing that was attractive to us with the SaaS model is we build a product, customers pay literally for access to that product and to use that product. We're not doing additional work each time we have a customer. So that's one thing that made the SaaS model attractive to us. And secondly, it's also a lot more accessible, right? If we were going to build a solution for a company, we might charge them in thousands of dollars, right? But with SaaS, more customers can come in at a lower entry point with zero upfront investment to start using the product. It's also a lot faster to deliver services to people, right? So from the moment you sign up to Bizop, you can already start using it, right? Rather than having to build something from the ground up and all of that. So SaaS is really attractive in terms of like scalability, attractive in terms of like even the revenue model. There's this consistent stream of income coming in, whether it's monthly or annually, rather than looking for the next customer so that you can just get one project or one contract and then the next project again. So SaaS is a lot more scalable, and sort of it's attractive in terms of how consistent the revenue comes in.
And making back the reference that you had mentioned before, that and not digitalized service business, that the unit economics are quite, not, I wouldn't say bad, yeah, but more customers, more variable costs. That might be a difference also on the SaaS business model, right? Because it doesn't change that much on the unit economics and on the variable cost if you have 1,000 users or just 10.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, right? So if we have 1,000 users, the cost of serving 1,000 users is not times 1,000 the cost of serving one user, right? So you might not even see a significant change in your operational cost or even your infrastructure cost scaling from one user to 10,000 users, right? So it just makes things a lot easier for you as a founder or as a company.
We will dig a little bit more into the advantages of the SaaS business model later. You mentioned already that you are applying a SaaS business model, and where does this come from? A little bit, the SaaS business model was highly mentioned when one of the famous US-based investors, Andreessen Horowitz, was mentioning in 2011 there's no problem that SaaS business models have super high valuations because basically software is eating the economy, and this is coming a lot, and there will be a huge boost over the next 10 years. So what has happened internationally, globally, we have a lot of SaaS companies. There is a high share in the digital economy of SaaS business models. However, in Africa, we haven't seen that so much in the past, but it's coming now. It's one of the strongest growing business models on the continent. So some people call it the SaaS revolution is coming now and has its advantages. But there is some specifics on the African continent and the particular countries that we are having that made it impossible in the past that we have good SaaS business models already running and being offered. And I would like to discuss this a little bit. What were the limitations in the past? Because then we have an entry point to also reference to the trends at the moment and that it's changing. So when we look at the past African continents, why was there no SaaS take-up like on the global level from your point of view?
Yeah, so one key thing is with SaaS, especially as a software company, there's a level of investment that's required to kick off the business, right? You need to build a product that is valuable enough for companies to pay for and pay for consistently, right? And so when you consider that as a company or as a founder, you need money, right? You need time to build this product. And then if you don't have like significant funding coming in, it's a bit difficult to commit to something like this, right? Because it might take you, say, 1 year, 2 years, even 5 years to achieve product market fit, right? So if you don't have that sort of backing, financial backing, it just makes sense for you to maybe just get a job somewhere or build something, build a custom software for a customer, get paid upfront. It just made sense, right? With a bit more funding coming into the African ecosystem, some SaaS-focused investors like Startup Wise guys, I mean, then things are starting to change, right? So you have people funding businesses at the early stage, investing in their ideas, and these people have some sort of runway to build something that works, get customers, and benefit from the benefit at the end of the day with their investors as well, right? So back in the day, you didn't have as much funding coming into the Africa SaaS ecosystem. So when there's no funding, there's always a problem with getting innovation, right? Because people need to take care of their families, so they would rather just get a job or just build a software for someone and get paid, and that's it.
The funding gap is a general topic that we have on the continent in comparison to international levels. So funding in percentage of GDP is really still dramatically low in Africa, and we are on a catch-up race because the innovation needs to be financed. How do you see the topic of the overall environment that startups have in order to provide a SaaS business like connectivity, broadband, energy shortages, etc., that make it a little bit difficult to deliver a pure online business? How do you think about that situation, Charles?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. The cost of data connectivity is getting cheaper, but it's still expensive, right? So you have people that would like to do these things, but when they consider the costs involved, so you have data costs, you have power, right? There are regions in Africa, in Nigeria, that do not have consistent power. So there are some things that Africans are dealing with that their US counterparts don't even think about at all, right? So you want to get something done, but there's power outage, right? You want to get something done, you have to spend a huge chunk of your money to buy data, right? Those are challenges that African founders are dealing with on a daily basis that makes it a sort of barrier to focus on business or even to focus on SaaS. And it goes way, way beyond technology, right? Even everyday lives of Africans, these things affect productivity and efficiency. Yeah.
When we look at the substitute for a SaaS product, you could always, from the customer side, as a small or medium-sized company, could either use software as a service or they could run processes, anything, the use case that the company would deliver, they could do it themselves. And the cost of labor is still quite low in comparison to, for example, international prices of international SaaS companies.
Right.
Which brings this adoption rate a little bit down, because it's weird. It would sound weird that we have international SaaS startups and their products. So why aren't they used that much from small and medium-sized companies on the African continent, which is a second aspect on the whole story?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, one major thing is cost in terms of, so in the agency that I was running, right, CK Digital, we were using a SaaS software called Basecamp. Basecamp costs 99. I mean, as at the time we signed up, it cost $99, right? $99 is not small money for, I mean, as cheap as $99 sounds, it's not cheap for the average small business that's looking to just one tool, right? It's pretty pricey. Then when you then layer FX, like the
exchange rate
cost, yes, the exchange rate into the equation, it then blows out of proportion. So as at the time we started using Basecamp, it was costing us in Naira, let's say 99 times say 150. It was costing us like 14,850 Naira, right, to use Basecamp. Right now, it costs us 79,200 Naira to use the same software.
Yes, because the Naira went down.
Over a time period. Exactly, right? So it then becomes a big challenge for this company. So number one, even if they're pretty comfortable and they have revenue, the fact that it is very unreliable, like they can't depend on a specific rate. They don't know what their costs are going to be next year. So even if they get on the software and they're paying X Naira, it might be 2X, 3X by next year. So that's another challenge. So both the cost of the software and then the exchange rates.
Yeah, I think the exchange rate really calls for more solutions that are coming from the continent, where you're sitting in the same currency regime and you don't have the risk. Fully agree. How do you think about payment providers being able to pay online? Let's put, for example, Stripe as one of the major payment providers of international SaaS companies, and the likelihood that an African SME can pay via Stripe.
Yes. So so within like the local ecosystem, we have really good payment solutions, right? We have like Paystack, we have Flutterwave, those are like the most popular, right? To use Stripe in Africa as a SaaS business owner, you basically need to register your company outside of Nigeria, right? So that's already that's a challenge, right? It's not cheap to register your company outside of Nigeria, or then to even run the company outside of Nigeria. The moment you decide to set up a company in the US, for instance, there are some taxes that you're going to pay, whether you make money or not, right? So that's another. So you then see SaaS founders building things that are localized, and then instead of sort of accessing like the larger global market, because one of the advantages of SaaS is if you're building a SaaS product, you can actually serve customers anywhere in the world, right? As long as you don't have like regulatory challenges. But then because of some of these barriers, you see people trying to build solutions for their local ecosystem, even if it's not as accepting as they would want. So those are some challenges as well.
Yes, totally agree. Yeah, the localization of the service, that's heavily needed. How do you feel in the past was the acceptance of using a cloud-based service that was online available versus on-premise stuff?
Oh yeah, I think there's wide adoption for cloud-based solutions in Africa, right? Specifically in Nigeria, there's wide acceptance. People use cloud-based tools every time, from their emails to something like Canva to Figma. I mean,
it has really changed, right? It has really changed.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of feel like Nigeria sort of followed that trend from on-premise solutions. I mean, there was a time you wanted to install Photoshop, you have to go and buy a CD and install it on your computer. I mean, the moment it became cloud-based, all of us just followed that trend as well. So there's wide acceptance and adoption of cloud-based solutions in Africa.
Yeah. So in the past, we had some limiting factors, I would say, right, in the different countries in Africa, as opposed to the international trend that was running already towards SaaS. But the situation has changed, and it has changed a lot. And that's the reason why we are seeing SaaS as one of the most growing business models in Africa. I would like to discuss now a little bit with you and get your opinion on why the situation of the adoption of the SaaS business model is changing so much now, that the broadband is more accessible and getting cheaper. We had the topic already, right? So this is really changing. Anything else that you would like to add if we look at the last, let's say, 2-3 years that is really changing the game?
Yeah, so one major driver is talent in Africa. We have really, really good talent in terms of like engineering talent, design talent. There are things that people wanted to get done before that they would have to reach out to maybe Indian companies, American companies that they can get done now in Nigeria. In terms of like founders and even their customers, you mentioned, I mean, something that's already clear, the cost of data is getting lower and lower every day, right? Maybe not as fast as we want, but it's actually getting cheaper, right? Especially with the competition in the market. That has also helped in terms of adoption of these cloud solutions. But I feel like the biggest thing is really the culture. Africans, I mean, the Africans that I deal with every day are very inquisitive, right? We want to learn how things work. We want to do things that our Western counterparts are doing, right? We want to deliver at the same level as these other people, irrespective of the challenges that we have as people. Yeah. So you see Nigerians, you see Africans doing really big things. Like you might see a piece of software and have no idea where it was built from, right? And that has improved over time, right? Within the last 3 years, you've seen significant improvement in the talent within the African ecosystem, right? That's been helpful. We also have some challenges, right? Because when we have this talent, some of them are leaving the country to access better opportunities elsewhere, right? But we've seen that there's definitely improvement in the talent. We have more people. I'm running a community of SaaS founders, and I'm always impressed the number of people that are building SaaS solutions in Africa for the African ecosystem or for the global audience, right? So lots of people are already building stuff. People are already seeing the opportunities. We have more investors coming into the ecosystem to sort of fund businesses, and over time you can see that there's definitely improvement.
Yeah, fully agree, Charles. We need the right people, and they're coming now, yeah, with the good education in order to build those SaaS businesses. I fully agree. I had a look at a little bit international statistics, and the World Economic Forum cited some time ago already, yeah, but still, I think it's valid that it's limiting the economic development in Africa, that we have still low productivity levels, but the software as a service can help us leapfrog to get to that higher productivity levels. And seeing SMEs also pushing for digitization, so the adoption rate of software though might go up. I'm just looking at our comment section, and I would like to take in the question of Ibrahim Bashir for a sec. Thanks so much for getting it in. So Ibrahim is asking, how do you deal with consumer behavior where people are not used to monthly or SaaS-like payments, so where people are really not used of doing this? They would like to have their transaction-based model. What kind of customers in your segment are open to SaaS adoption? Charles, have you experienced problems under brackets in segmentation or adoption rate because of the SaaS business model?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Ibrahim is asking a very, very solid question. Consumers or businesses find it a bit difficult to agree to, like, I mean, so there's this thing, like, I've noticed with Africans, right? When it comes to like agreements, like long-term agreements, a lot of people shy away from stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just pricing, right? If you're speaking, you just want to do a deal with someone, the moment you bring a contract into the discussion, it kind of seems like, hey, why are you trying to trap me, right? So that's a concern. So when you now bring it into subscription payments, where it's like, okay, they're going to be charging me X naira or X dollars every single month. It's sort of, I mean, for a lot of people, it's a challenge. We've had conversations where businesses say, okay, you know what, can we just pay a large upfront, make a large upfront payment, and then maybe an annual maintenance contract or something. They're sort of fine with that kind of stuff. But what I've also seen is that if a product is really valuable to a business, irrespective of their size, they will pay for it. We have Nigerians that are paying for Canva every single month, right? Because they need it as a tool to do their business. We have people that are paying for other tools, right? Because they've been able to, I mean, those tools have proven their value, right? And these people don't see an alternative to these tools, and so it just makes sense for them to pay for it. So what makes that possible is that these products have sort of built a sort of free tier into their products, and then they nudge you to upgrade to a paid tier, right? As Africans, many of us like, I mean, globally, we like free.
It's a global phenomenon, right?
Yeah, we like free solutions. So if you bring them in with the free solution, understand their pain points, understand the job to be done, you can sort of tell what you need to add to your product that they will be willing to pay for. The mistake many of us make is we already give the bulk of the value for free and then find it difficult to monetize later as people use our product. So that's that. Another approach that has worked, that is already working in Africa, is value-based pricing, right? So, for instance, people are using Paystack, right? And even though Paystack is not SaaS, but the fact that you don't pay for the solution unless you get paid sort of feels like, I mean, works for me, right? Or situation where somebody else is bearing, because maybe it's your customer that is bearing the cost, it sort of works as well. So if we're able to implement value-based pricing into our products where people are paying based on the level of value that they get from the product, it sort of makes things, it sounds fair to these people. Like, again, the challenge is people are not getting significant value from the product, and you expect them to pay for that product every single month, whether they use it or they don't use it. That's something that Nigerians have a problem with.
Yes, totally agree. Of the SaaS business model in comparison to a licensed business model is that you're not bound for a whole year or 2 years, because it's a monthly payment and you have quite short notification periods, so you can get out. But it sometimes looks like that for people, yeah. So super interesting background story, Charles, on how you do SaaS. Before we come to the next question, I want to sneak something in between and ask you this. Any society on the African continent is a lot trust-based. So people really want to see each other before they do business. They want to get to know. It's not like, digitally booking, whatever. It's just a tendency. It's not true everywhere, right? But it's trust-based.
Yes.
Do you have a recommendation for any SaaS founder, how they can build in this trust-based doing business into this digital product where people self-service book it?
Yeah, I think if you're serving like the African market, you need to be a bit flexible with your offering, especially if you're selling to like some of these bigger companies, right? For instance, we've had some conversations at Bizop where we had to help people understand that, hey, in addition to just this software solution, we can also maybe connect you with partners that can handle some of the consulting side of the work for you, right? So that just kind of makes it look, it's a bit, those kind of companies that want like human interaction and all of that, we can say, hey, we can partner, we can connect you with our partners. Another interesting thing I would just say is more of us, more of we, the SaaS founders, need to build for the global market, right? We need to build for the global market. Africa will catch up, right? I'm
For
very,
sure.
very sure about that. Africa
For
will
sure.
catch up. But interestingly, even from the agencies I was running, we noticed that immediately after COVID, things started to change in terms of people's adoption. I mean, the trust factor, even if they don't see you physically, right? So you can do business with people, and I mean, if it has to be a Google Meet, that's fine. If it has to be Zoom, it's fine. You don't necessarily need to meet them face to face. But again, it boils down to the problem you are solving and how much you're making, right? If you need to have meetings with every single customer you're onboarding, it makes sense for you to be selling something that is worth the time and effort that is involved in closing a customer, right?
Yeah.
But if, of course, if you're going to do like B2C SaaS or like mass market SaaS, then you need to ensure that you're serving a market that is wide enough such that even if you don't close African businesses, you're still okay. That's the way I see it.
Yes, valid point. I'm just asking back to Ibrahim and Musa Adum whether we have answered your question that you had before on convincing people to jump on a SaaS business model. I hope we could. If not, please use the comment section so that we know. I'm just looking through the questions, and I think there is one that nicely plays into our previous discussion that I would like to take on now. That's from Ayodeji Akwala. He's basically asking any tips for negotiating SaaS where your main provider or partners are institutions, so more public or government sector, I suppose. They are really slow to adopt technology, long sales cycles, right? Legacy systems, no fun. And he gives the example of Nigerian universities. Any advice, Charles, from your side?
I mean, I'll tell you that it's going to be tough. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's going to be really tough. When you're selling to institutions they're not very high in terms of adoption of technology, it's going to be tough. So number one thing you need to understand is your sales cycle is going to be very long. So it might not take you 1 month to close a deal. It might take you 2 years to close a deal. So you need to be sure that are you willing to wait that long to close the deal? Because there's also a big opportunity there because not a lot of people are selling to these types of institutions. So if you're able to get in, most likely because they're also slow, the lifetime value has the potential of being very, very high, right? They will not change the solution once they start using it. So there's definitely an opportunity there, but there's also need for patience. And that's really where funding comes in as well. So either you have your self-funded or you have investors that have given you this patient capital to be able that understand the opportunity that you're trying to address, and they are willing to stay with you on the long term, right? If you have, say, 20 Nigerian universities as customers, you most likely will keep that customer for a very, very long time, right? But is the solution itself valuable to these universities? That's one big thing that you need to ask. Like, does it solve a very clear problem that the moment you speak to them about it, they know for sure that they really need to have this? And then you might also need to understand that you need to be flexible, right? So you can't approach it as pure SaaS. Even if it's SaaS, there's going to be a lot of human involvement in the discussion, right? You might need to do multiple meetings. In terms of negotiation, you might even offer them like a free trial, right? So maybe you say for the first 3 months, or depending on how big the deal is, some people have done like for the first 1 year, just get them on board, remove every form of objection along the way, like a free pilot for a period. That might help, but it's definitely tough selling to businesses that don't already use technology. In our own business, for instance, it's a red flag for us if you don't already use some other tool in your business. If we ask what other tools you use and you say no, we don't use any other tool, we know you're not going to pay for Bizop, right? Because you're not used to technology in the very first place, and we don't have the time or energy to educate you on how to use technology, right? So for us, it's not worth the effort. But if it's a very big deal and you've clearly solved the problem that these people have, then you just need to understand that it will take time and just be patient with the process.
You were mentioning this segmentation of your customers and whether you have your ideal customer profile in front of you. I think that's a very valid comment in general for any target segment. Not all potential customers are going to be good customers, and educating the market is horrible. It far takes too long. Yeah, fully agree, Charles. Yeah. What we see a lot is doing pilot projects. So the for free version that you were mentioning, we have a lot of SaaS companies who, for example, go to a new second segment, new industry for the same solution, and then they run pilot projects. They are sometimes for free, sometimes they're really very low price levels, but then you have a joint, a little bit of an additional feature, get customer feedback in, so that would be a good opportunity.
Yes.
We were mentioning before a little bit that many startups are sitting on a transaction-based business model. Sometimes they do combinations. We have this a lot in our own portfolio of startups also that we invested in Africa, that you run combinations, also good. Yeah, no worries about that. And Karina Lapina was handing in a question that goes into that direction. So what if you don't have a SaaS business model, but you would like to do that? So existing product. What would you recommend to watch out for founders that are trying to switch business model to SaaS? So let's say they're coming from transactional and they would like to switch. Is it easy to just change, or is there anything on the product to be done?
Yeah, so it's definitely not easy to switch. There's the technology challenge, and then there's the human side of things, right? Especially when we've sort of we've addressed the issue that people just want. I mean, lots of the consumers or the businesses, they just want transactions, right? I pay you this, you give me that, and we're done, right? So if you already have that sort of framework and you then want to change it to SaaS, number one, you need to speak with your customers ahead of time to understand if that's something they're open to. Of course, there's the advantage of lower costs, right? It's sort of like spreading that cost over a longer period. So that might be attractive to customers. There might be other things you chip into it. Maybe you say better support that you'll be able to offer because it's now SaaS. But you definitely need to speak with both your existing customers and prospective customers to sort of understand if it will work for them. There's also the approach of sort of, it's called like grandfathering your customers. So you might maintain your existing customers on the current model and then have like a separate model for new customers. So your new pricing approach is then for your newer customers, while your older customers remain on the legacy plans or the legacy approach. That sort of addresses the problem, or that addresses the human aspect of this conversation, right? But of course, as you would expect, you still need to do some research to speak with the prospective customers to sort of understand if they are how willing they are to go the SaaS approach. But SaaS is attractive to customers themselves, especially if the software solution is expensive, right? And they see SaaS as a way to spread that cost to make it a lot more accessible for them. I mean, most businesses are happy with that, right? It's those bigger businesses that don't have a problem with money that would rather say, let me just pay you one-off as a transaction to get this solution, right? Another interesting thing to communicate to customers is in terms of like ongoing management, right? If it's like an on-premise solution or a one-off thing, support is very, very difficult, right? But if you sell support as an offering within the SaaS, that hey, if you jump on this our SaaS model, we will be able to provide you ongoing updates. We'll be able to give you ongoing support. It sort of makes the deal more attractive to these businesses. So those are some things to consider. Then, of course, from the technology side of things, there are things like you might want to create different plans for your product and then get access to those plans based on what the customer has paid for. That's new engineering that you need to do into your product, right? You need to integrate a sort of billing system, maybe it's Stripe that sort of handles like your subscription, or a third-party subscription management solution as well. That's new engineering that you also need to do. You also need to sort of understand in terms of what customers are going to value, right? How do you determine what should go into the different plans that you have? You don't want to make a mistake where you put all of the useful value on one plan and nobody upgrades to the next plan. If you're looking to consider like product-led growth, you now need to start considering, okay, do you want to do a free trial or like a freemium, or do you want to just go the sales-led route where people need to maybe speak to a salesperson to get things done? So there are lots of things to consider when going from like transaction-based model to like the SaaS model. But when done right, obviously we can see from the global trend that SaaS is the way to go. And a lot of more customers are leaning towards SaaS.
Yeah, fully agree. Thanks so much, Charles, for really the detailed explanation on where in the company we have any influence in the different areas when switching a business model. It's not just a business model, right? It has a lot that goes behind. We had a little bit the discussion before on there is more talent in the market in order to develop products, and Mrunal Kalbande is handing in a question on the software development side. So I have my own opinion on this one, but I would like to understand also your opinion. I have a quite strong opinion on that one. So basically, Mrunal is asking, are African SaaS companies outsourcing their software development?
Yeah, so so coming from someone that used to run a web development company, we are seeing less companies outsourcing their software development. A couple of years ago, most companies didn't want to hire like their own engineers or designers or product teams. They just wanted to pay someone to sort of handle all of that for them. That was also because there was a very low level of education as to what it took to run a SaaS company, right? But over time, we've seen that has changed, right? There's abundance of talent in Africa, in Nigeria, right? And so it just makes more sense for them to gain more control over the product journey, to just hire their own designers, their own engineering team, DevOps, product, marketing, everything in-house. So we see that's what is happening. But of course, there are some people that cannot afford to do that, right? Either they don't want to even do it, or they consider the cost involved, especially when they're not funded. You might have someone that is non-technical, has seen a problem, wants to solve the problem, but cannot do it themselves. And as much as you say founders should learn to code, for some people it's not feasible, right? Those types of people tend to outsource their software development at the early stages, but the moment they have revenue coming in, the moment they get funding, they will most likely change that model to build their software in-house. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, and if I may add here a little bit, I know it's a funding topic. Still, outsourcing might be more expensive than having it in-house, because also the company you have outsourced it to has to make a living, right? So they have a margin in it. And reaction times, reliability on the resource, those are all topics that are more believing us that in-house is the better solution. I just can add from an investor's point of view, if you would like to get a VC on board, a venture capitalist, in order to finance future growth of your company, it's an absolute must to have tech knowledge in a SaaS product, which is a software product delivered online in-house, and at least a small team sitting in-house and having all the intellectual property rights of the tech in-house. Yeah. So I agree with you. We see outsourced tech a lot, and it's a budgeting topic. But at least the moment you have first revenue and proof in that it's going to work, it's time to insource, to heavily insource. And sometimes we help startups with insourcing. Yeah? So that was the answer to the question of IoDG. Then let me jump over. Yeah, okay. Musa has another question. Musa Adum Mustafa, and it's going into the direction of marketing your SaaS product and increasing sales. So the question is, based on your experience, what are better ways to give visibility, advertise and promote SaaS products in Africa? So maybe in the direction of well-performing channels and how to do it, a little bit tips and tricks in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a foundational principle for growth, it depends on who your customers are and where they are, right? And where they consume content as well. So if you're selling primarily B2B, it might make sense to directly reach out to those to those businesses and introduce your solution to them, or to advertise in the locations, whether it's offline or online, where those businesses are. So online, it might be LinkedIn if your ideal customers or the buyers are on LinkedIn, right? If it's offline, it might be events. There might be industry events that these people attend. So you might attend it, you might exhibit, you might sponsor those events, but you just want to be in front of those people. If it's B2C, I mean, you might do a much wider approach. You might follow a wider approach. So maybe you're doing general social media advertising, you're doing Google Ads. I mean, Google Ads even also works for B2B as well, if those people are searching for the solution already. You might also consider partnerships. Partnerships are not as popular, where if there are businesses or communities that are complementary to your solution. So if, for instance, you are selling a software and there's another company that is working with the same industry, right? That's not your direct competitor. You can address it. You can sort of present a partnership arrangement where they introduce your customers to their audience, and you introduce your customers to their audience as well, right? There are ways to make these partnerships work. So those are some approaches. So it might be online, might be events, it might be partnerships, it might be things like webinars, where you start by educating the audience first and then bring them into your funnel and then continue to nurture the relationship over time. But at the end of the day, it depends on what you're building, who you're building it for, where they are, where they're consuming this content. That sort of defines the marketing strategy that you use.
It's much, the power of partnerships is really strong, also for the SaaS businesses. So tapping into associations where all your customers, potential customers are in, is really a booster. Yeah, totally agree. So heading over to the question of Robert Okello, he's founder of Rudy, and in the transportation area, and he is having a question on this combination of two business models. So he's saying, can you, if you have a two-sided business model, for example, can you run two business models in parallel? For example, the SaaS for cargo owners and the commission-based one for the transporters. So two-sided, different audiences, more platform approach, and running several business models in parallel. Is this difficult? Can you do it? Is there a problem with it? What could hamper it?
Yeah, I don't see a problem with running multiple business models if it makes sense for the parties involved, right? And it happens more often than you might think. So you might even be a B2B, might be a B2B solution, and you have different models. You might be doing SaaS, and you might be doing even some level of transactional, maybe like services or consulting on the side, right? To help those customers achieve their goals, right? So it's definitely possible to combine multiple SaaS models. But of course, as you can imagine, it's more stressful. Your approach is not straightforward, right? It's not clear how things work. You need to educate the different audiences on how this pricing works, how that pricing works. So it's a lot more streamlined if you have one pricing model, but sometimes it just makes sense to have multiple pricing models for the different types of stakeholders that you work with. So in your case, it seems to make sense. I don't know what the specific challenge that you're facing is. If it's working, then fine. There's no problem to stop it. If it's not working, then you can consider why it's not working. yeah.
Charles, it might be more a problem if you have for one stakeholder two business models in parallel. The multi-stakeholder, different business model per stakeholder somehow works, right? Have you seen models where it's the same, it's this one stakeholder and two different business models, so you could book it either transaction-based or no, it's a drama,
no,
right? Total
no,
confusion. Total confusion.
It messes things up. We tried it earlier when we initially launched Bizop. We had because we were trying to be scrappy, get customers any way we can. We're speaking to everybody. We had no idea who our target customers were. So some people reached out and said, "Hey, I want to pay for Bizop like once for a year, and that's it." Another person was saying, "Okay, I'm willing to pay." No, I think some people want like lifetime deals. They pay you a larger amount for like lifetime. Some people wanted subscription. Things just got messy, right? So you want it to be as streamlined as possible. Also to be able to forecast your revenue, to be able to say, hey, if we have 10 customers, this is how much we are going to be making. If we have 50 customers, this is how much we're going to be making. But if you have multiple business models, customers paying you in different approaches, it becomes really, really stressful and messy to sort of forecast your revenue. And of course, it's a red flag when you're speaking with investors as well, because that predictability is no longer there.
Yep. So Robert, I hope we could answer your question. Multi-stakeholders, different business models could be doable. Still has its disadvantages, but one stakeholder, different business models might not be good. Yeah. I think we could take also, it's quite a specific question, I have to admit, Charles. Let's see whether we can answer it. If we can't answer it, then we can't, right? From Kondvani, Alex and Tonya. It's a question on payment solution in relation to the SaaS service. Yeah, so he's basically asking about tools that can be used if you have a SaaS or recurring business model, if you're servicing different countries because you're scaling and different currencies.
Yeah, so the way we do it right now, we started from Nigeria and we're trying to serve a global audience. So what we did was customers from Nigeria see Nigerian pricing and they pay us using Paystack. Customers outside of Nigeria see USD pricing and they pay us through Stripe. That's what we have done, right? So it depends on the payment technology that you're using. If you're using a technology that allows you serve customers in multiple currencies, I mean, that's fine. But there are two things to consider: what the customer sees and what you get, right? The customer might see the pricing in, say, Naira or in Ghana cedis, but what do you get at the end of the day? It makes more sense if, irrespective of what the customer sees, you get your own money in one currency, right? So if, for instance, your customer sees it in Naira and you are paid in USD, it makes a lot more sense for you, right? Rather than customers, you receiving money in USD, receiving money in Naira, receiving money in Ghana cedis, and then conversion becomes a problem. But there's some technology, like there's some payment gateways or payment solutions like Flutterwave, like Paystack, that might handle all of that complexity for you. Customers pay in whatever currency they are comfortable with, and you are settled in one particular currency, right? I know that if customers pay us from anywhere in the world using our Stripe integration, we get paid in USD, right? And it just makes sense for us. So there are definitely tools from the payment side of things that make this very, very possible for you. So it's not a problem that you should have if you're working with a really good payment solution.
Yeah. So this brings me a little bit into the direction of wrapping up today, because we have 5 minutes to go. And first of all, thanks a lot for all the questions. If you still have questions, don't worry, put them in. We are still moderating the comment section, and we are trying to help as much as we can and bringing expertise, anything on the SaaS topic in Africa. I would like to finish with a wrap up on the opportunities that we have with SaaS in Africa, because there is some specifics about the business model, and I would like to summarize this a little bit. So you can go to new markets fast because you're delivering online when you're running a SaaS service. You have a lot more stable revenues because it's recurring revenues. There's no seasonality like holidays, religious festivities where everything goes down, or if you have elections and then everything goes down when you have a transaction-based business model. You could become a global player by doing it. It doesn't matter because it's open for everyone. I think there is a very specific market entry case for any African-based SaaS business models. You can go to another emerging markets that have similar use cases to solve. Everybody's always looking at, can we go after Africa when we have everything covered? Can we go to US and Europe? Why? There are other emerging markets like Latin, Southeast Asia, where you might run into similar use cases that you are solving, and this is a huge market, and this opportunity is open. You can integrate with other services via APIs easily because you're running online, they are running online. You could even tap into their user base for yourself. So this interlinking is super. There's no implementation cost for your customers. Plug and play, they pay, they use. You can do automatic updates easily. So it's rather low risk. And I'm so happy that we had Charles over here today and you spent time with us and shared your experience with Bizop. And also from your founders community on SaaS founders, which I think is really, really valuable for anybody in the audience to get even a stronger push on SaaS. And so thanks a lot, Charles, for joining us today. To everybody listening in, the stream can be rewatched. We'll put it online and the comment section stays open. So if you have still questions and they pop up one day later, don't worry, just use the comment section. We will moderate. And it remains to me to say thanks for joining, to everybody who joined in today and asked really super cool questions, because we know this is in the head of many people. And the state of SaaS in Africa has a very, very, very good prospection into the future. It will be really good. It's coming. So happy to be there. And thanks, Charles, again for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks, Petra.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.